Hi, everybody. Welcome to CURVEX's Mental Health Podcast. I'm here with my very good friend, Askar. It's a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me, Thomas.
I was hoping you could introduce yourself to the audience so they could get to know who you are and what you do.
Of course. So besides being a great friend of yours, and thank you for that acknowledgement, my name is Asger. I'm 40 years old, and I think one title would be a psychedelic entrepreneur. Because that kind of that title holds everything that I've been doing for most of my life, actually. Okay. So for the past 20 years, I've been highly involved in IT, technology, building different kind of platforms, but also on the side, been very much engaged in especially plant medicine and how that affects consciousness. Okay. So you can say psychedelics, technology, and consciousness.
Okay.
And so that's been my three vices in life, so to say.
Cool. And did you start this on a how'd you get involved in this? It's a very specialized type of medicine. And so did you something that you did for yourself, or did you just hear about it and you wanted to help people? Or what's the story behind the beginning of it?
Yeah, so I think in that sense, I'm a bit like Obelix from Asterix and Obelix, the guy who fell in the pot as a young age. I had my first experience with psychedelics, magic mushrooms, as the common urban lingo would go. Sure. When I was 17 years old. Okay. I grew up in a Christian home, which kind of challenged my sense of self and sense of the world, because I didn't really buy into it. So at a very early age, I was on the lookout for something that could kind of transcend my understanding of the world and kind of give me a sense of something else than the religious point of view that I grew up in. Yeah, okay. This is, of course, highly retrospective when I look back, but being a young man in a kind of a, where am I? Who am I? Where did I come from? Do I believe in creationary or evolutionary? And then having this out of mind, out of body, out of context experience, that changed my life, definitely.
So when you first started engaging or practicing with this stuff, it did give you an outer body.
Completely.
And can you explain what that means for someone who's never experienced that? Because it's such an abstract term. Yeah. You hear this all the time, but what does that mean?
Yeah, exactly? And that's, of course, in itself kind of like a paradox. I need to sit here in my body.
Yeah, exactly.
How I felt being out of my body. Yes. So there's definitely a modality.
Totally. It's such a contradiction.
Yeah.
So can you explain it at your best ability?
Of course. My experience and also my understanding of what a certain kind of plants and fungi, mushrooms can do in this psychedelic experience. Yeah. For me was, or is still a dissolving of a centerpiece inside of me that I use without knowing. Sometimes I know it, to navigate the world by, see the world by, perceive the world by. You would call it the ego if you were Freudian. Neuroscience would call it the default mode network, a center in me, physically in my brain, but also in my consciousness that kind of stops or dissolves for a period of time. So if everything is navigated by a sense of me, that stops or isn't there or isn't the centerpiece anymore. Yeah. What is then there? What is the experience of being in a body? Yeah. If you don't say this is my hand, if this is if my isn't there, this is a hand, this is everything. Yeah. It's a little complex to explain, but so it's for me, it's a transcendence of my identification of who I am as a Askar being here, 40-year-old. It's a transcendence of that. It's a transcendence of being in the body, being in my mind, and being then in connection with everything in life. Yeah. So when I say out of body, it's almost like I'm in body and I'm embodying everything, because I don't have that boundary between sense of me identified with who I am, and that is gone. Yeah. So I becomes everything. Yeah.
I guess if you were to try to give an example, it would be like if I'm seeing my arm come out of me here, I can see, okay, that's my arm. But let's say you're looking at a virtual reality goggles or just even a video camera of someone that's filmed from here and you see arms coming out, the image would be the exact same of arms coming out, but you wouldn't say, oh, that's my arm. You would just say that is a arm. Yeah. So what you're saying is that through this medicine, there's a disidentification with something that you normally think is yours, and now all of a sudden it is just more of a tool that's coming out. Like if I held a hammer, I wouldn't say the hammer's me, but if I held this hammer maybe my whole life, I never let go, then I might say this hammer is me, because I'm always constantly identifying with it. So it's undoing. I guess there's been a conditioning since you were born, and consciousness came into the body, and you started to learn how to use your body as a tool, your mind as a tool, and saying, oh, now I am this. And that conditioning has really been reinforced over the years. And what you're saying is this medication somehow just almost instantly just cuts that, where you're back into just a viewer mode, consciousness, presence, seeing all these things. Okay.
Yeah.
And this sounds like it could be very helpful for mental health.
So I would say that we're trying to describe some ineffable or difficult to explain or put into words, definitely.
Yeah.
And I would say that this is definitely something that is and can be a medicine.
Yeah.
It's been a medicine always in our human history, from the shamanic echo in North Lapland all the way down to Amazonas, everywhere in the world where shamanic practice have been practiced and formed around relationship with nature. Yeah. These kind of plants that has this ability to transcend the individual's identification with oneself and into a higher identification of connectedness to everything. Yeah. That is our premise now, that we've kind of boiled it down to that's what's happening. So that has always been a medicine. And of course, in this modern age, is still, from my point of view, a medicine. But I will also say with a kind of a disclaimer or a warning that, of course, as people might know, that psychedelics can and has also been kind of stigmatized as something that can promote a very difficult experience, the notion of a bad trip, people going nuts and so on. Because, of course, having that out of body, out of mind, out of sense of context and experience can also be frightening. Of course it can. Especially, let's imagine that you are in nature and you have this experience and you feel this beautiful, blissful, connection with everything in nature, with life itself, life force, life energy. Of course, that is a rewarding, a gifting, a rejuvenating experience. But let's say that you instead go to a party in town and you take the very same substance, but all of a sudden you feel that your energy and your identification is with everything, drunk people, scared, it becomes a different setting. So,
with all the immatureness and sloppiness and vulgarity.
So you can say if you take it into kind of like a metaphysic level that people are there with their hungry ghosts, some are there for finding the next thing to eat, to drink, to fuck.
Or the girl. Or
so there's definitely that this needs to come with a precaution that if you're opening up to a sense of everything, what setting are you doing it in, and what is your basic mindset? So this is of course the notion of set and setting. Substance was kind of the preached kind of pre-warning or labeling of how to use these kind of substances back in the 60s, setting and substance. That these
is that a thing? Is that a term? Set, setting? Oh,
yeah. So actually coined by a guy called Timothy Leary.
Okay.
Or practiced in that regard. And in today's practice, whether you use it underground or overground, this kind of medicines in research or in actual work as a practitioner, coach or therapist and so on, the 3 S's, substance, set and setting, has involved into 6 S's. So there's also the support, the session, and the sitter. So the understanding that there's also parameters and qualities in how's the setting built, how long is the session, what kind of support did you have before and after this experience, and who's going to sit with you. Do you have a sitter? What's the preparation for him and her? What's the kind of contractual obligation, and how to create a space holding environment and so on. So it's evolving still. We're still trying to grasp how to use these medicines that have been used for thousands of years in human history.
And that's what you do, I guess. You are now as the shamanic entrepreneur. No, was it?
No, psychedelic entrepreneur.
Psychedelic entrepreneur. Yeah,
I think shamanic is for me. It's a grand title, or I don't see myself as shamanic. Okay. I have a great respect because I think there's so much culture, there's so much deep understanding of energy and this shamanic practice, and also often a horrible initiation to become a shaman. That you often go through an experience of death and being ripped apart, having your body decayed by whatever entities, and then you become this hollow bone with no marrow, so that you can. This is the imagery or the symbol, the archetypical hollow bone that you can then connect between the world, the spirit, and our world. And because you have been eaten out and everything is gone, you're just a hollow bone with no marrow. Meaning when the spirit travels through, there's no chains in. You're
just like a conduit, like a
exactly. With no filtering or alternation of yours, you're not here.
And normally that would be the ego, as you said.
Exactly.
So the ego death is the removal of this.
Exactly.
I guess that gets in the way of your connection between oneness with everything and the oneness with who you think that you are, which I guess dies through ego death.
Exactly. And you can even say, how can it's just take a more practical in our society example. How can you ever give a good advice without any residual alternation of your own impression or your own experience? Or if I was to give you a good advice of your situation, how do I make sure that good advice isn't kind of tinted with any of my residual ego that I have this value in life that everybody should do like this. So how do I do that? Simple.
So often we want to help people. It's our projections. We love to tell people what to eat or not to eat, or how to the clothes that they should wear, who they should date or not date, or all. And that's very much based off of what we think is right and wrong, and it has nothing to do with objectively
best for that person.
Exactly. So that's why so many people who want to help should actually just kind of help save themselves before they start trying to save the world, because it's likely that the whatever is really triggering you or causing pain in your life is something you're projecting further and somehow creating more pain. Unfortunately, and there's such an urge to want to help people, but when we do, often it can be misguided.
Completely, and we end up having ambitions on behalf of everybody else but ourselves.
What we think we should do, or what would be right based on what we've learned, but not what we think would be right based on who we are. And so, this is something that you do with back to the.
So my journey has definitely been interesting over these past 23 years or so since I had that first experience. I have had definitely an interesting path in integrating that experience and that really deep. When I had these experiences at this young age, I knew that I wanted to, had to, was called to work with these substances, these medicines, and that experience in some sort of way. But being 17 and in this kind of break away from Christianity and then having these experiences, I really wasn't capable of integrating that into something meaningful. So that's been my journey for the past 20 years or so, to find a way to integrate into my own life. Because as you just said, when I had that experience, I was like, oh, everybody else needs to have that experience. I got ambitious on everybody else's ways. And a lot of time I actually ended up spending a lot of time realizing that I needed to work on myself first. And that's still a part of my journey, of course. But for the past 5-6 years, it's been more and more, concrete and forming into a path of this, integrating into a sustainable way of living, connecting my my career in IT and IT consultancy and information technology. With continued education as a psychotherapist and this passion or calling to work with psychedelics. So 5 or 6 years ago, I started to work with that modality of this plant medicine called microdosing. Okay. And microdosing is the idea or practice, and you can even say maybe even a spiritual practice of just using a small amount of a plant medicine, such a small amount that it won't radically change this sense of self, this your normal identification of who you are. So it won't create that transcendence into an altered identification. Instead,
and when you say small, how small actually are you talking?
Yeah, so that definitely differs from what kind of plant medicine and substance. But in general, I would say 1/10 of a dose where a normal dose would give you this transcendent experience.
Yeah, okay.
A microdose would be 1/10 of that dose in dosage. So the idea with microdosing is that instead of having this one deep, profound experience that you need to integrate with the setting, substance, session, support, and sitter, you instead do a very small dose. You do it on a normal day before you go to work, first thing in the morning, and then you go and do your business and forget about the microdose. And you do this, let's say every third day, and you do it in a period of 30, 60, 90 days, a couple of months. Yeah. So this changes, you can say the regime a lot, because then it becomes a different way of micro-integrating small changes, just a small change in your field of consciousness. The dose
nothing that you can feel, nothing like, oh, I can feel this right now.
Yeah. So what is feeling something right now? So that is a good question. Normally, you would say that a microdose is just around the perceptual level, the threshold of the perceptual level, meaning that you won't perceive it, you won't see anything changing in your visual acuity, or you won't hear changes, but you might sense it or feel it, or you might experience a change in your sense of self. And that is, of course, interesting, because few of us has this, now I'm sitting here on my chair and I'm checking in with what is my current sense of self. That's really not how it works for most of us. Unless you have your practice around meditation or breath work, you have a clear sense of self. So often the sense of self is in relation to doing something. So for instance, if I am sitting here having a conversation with you, I'm experiencing that I'm actually much more listening to you. I'm much more present with this very moment, because I am more, in my sense of self, or there's a change to my sense of self. Or if I'm working at an agency, I'm in marketing, and I experience that today I'm actually a bit more creative, because I'm not as much in my ego or my normal identification. So I'm a bit more, divergent and connected with ideas and other people's minds, and that sense of self, that change in sense of self, becomes a experience of heightened creativity. Yeah. Okay. So I could go on and try this or add this into a context. But from my point of view, it's the same thing that happens, changes. We have a heightened sense of self, and here sense of self being not the identification of ego and I. So the I and sense of self is kind of two different things, like Jungian understanding of there's the I and then the self. So when I use the word or the term sense of self, that is the connectedness to my source, which is everything. So this sense of self and connectedness. So that is, from my point of view, what happens. And I discovered this, as mentioned, 5 or 6 years ago when I started microdosing myself. I decided that I wanted to do a project around microdosing. So I filmed myself vlog style every day for 30 days. I
actually remember that. Now that you bring it up, I remember that on Facebook. I thought that was very cool.
Yeah, and I did all the kind of I knew I was doing something that was kind of challenging mainstream beliefs, and I was now going public as a IT guy talking about I want to do drugs every day for 30 days. You know, I have a kid, I have an ex-wife. I was like, oh, okay, this can have ramifications. So so I took really an honor in actually documenting my process around research and you know, I did a lot of prior preparation before starting and doing the first dose. Of course, I was nervous eating a small dose though of mushrooms, and then going into my IT consultancy job. And I remember the day I had a meeting with a big client, a transportation client in Denmark. I won't mention the name because then they will say, "Oh, that idea was really good." I was like, "Yeah, I was in shrooms." No, but I really, you know, breaking down that my own barrier. I've been doing psychedelics for so many years, even at that point in time, and still I hadn't, it was two different lives. It was like that part of me never integrated. You know, I'm Askar in a shirt, and I can go to board meetings and do my thing. And then I go home, and in the weekends, I'm the new shamanic wannabe guy dancing around in the forest and feeling connected to everything, you know, but they were they were in parallel, not really converging. So doing that first dose, besides, you know, triggering my mind saying, oh, it feels like we're getting on shrooms now. And I was like, oh, fuck, I'm going to get so high at this meeting, even though I knew that the dose was so, you know, so small. But my body that had been tuned to macro doses for many years kind of was like getting in that gear of, okay, so now we start with the onset and all. And of course that never came. So but that was me personally, or the sense of my body and my mind in that meeting. But I also realized that I really also transcended this barrier or this membrane between my life, at least, you know, the corporate life and my personal and spiritual and valued or my values and beliefs. I kind of started to merge those together with this small dose that I couldn't even feel. So it was really a mind fuck. See if I can say fuck on this podcast. I just did it. Fuck. So that became really an interesting journey for me. Sure. And also this understanding that sense of self, this change in sense of self can be this vehicle for personal development, for change towards whatever your motivation or intention or whatever you have in your life. You can put it in mindfulness or creativity or being present or less screen time, whatever it is you want to work with in your life. That heightened sense of self is the key driver for whatever change you want to do. So that really got me into that. I really got interested in working. And now that I saw that I could transcend these two modalities, work life and my passion of psychedelics, I started to push for that. Started to do dose coaching, as I called it. Started to take clients in and said, hey, I work with microdosing as a regime when I coach people. And I also started to, in that consultancy business I was in, I started to, you know, people wouldn't come and say it out loud, but in the hallway, they would say, hey, you know, I really want to get started with that as well. And of course, being in IT, it's kind of like a Silicon Valley phenomenon that microdosing can kind of, again, make you more creative, help you transcend your limiting beliefs on what you can do with technology and all that. So that started that path of saying, okay, this starts to form into something that I can, you know, where I can actually integrate myself as a more of a whole person with psychedelics, with technology, and with that interest in mental health. So for the years afterwards, I've worked a lot with microdosing and coaching and also therapy. As I took on this continued education as a psychotherapist, and then a year ago, more or less, I really felt the call to try to take this to the next level, so to say. In the middle of the pandemic, I really saw that the consequences of COVID wasn't really lack or loss of smell or taste or whatever. It was a much larger thing going on that we would all suffer for. Anxiety, depression, stress, traumatization. And here I was with a very good job in IT, doing my dose coach thing on the side and really engaging everything I could around this, and this microdoser project being a kind of a thing. And I got invited for national broadcast TV and to talk about it and stuff like that. But I knew that I couldn't just sit with this, my abilities as a techie, with this understanding of plant medicine and this deeper calling, and then seeing the world going in this direction. I was like, okay, I need to step into this calling and say, okay, I hear you.
Yeah.
We need to do something about it. I need to take my pieces of this and gather and try to form something. So 8 months ago, I took the plunge and quit my great job in consultancy and started an adventure. I'm so blessed and luckily that my fiance, who's also a psychotherapist, was like, okay, grab my hand, let's do it together. Yeah. This is your dream, but we are here, we're in it together. So we went kind of psychedelic Bonnie and Clyde on it, and started our company, The Dose, which is called. So we set up shop in Holland, where we can work with psilocybin in these mushrooms, truffle mushrooms, and our vision is to create a mental health platform where people can come, start their journey to figure out what that changed or heightened sense of self can be used for as a motivation or intention in their life. We are in the process. We want to build a platform where we help people kind of assess. So using what we know from coaching and cognitive behavioral therapy, assess what's your needs, why are you here, what's your motivation. So besides giving us a sense of why people are there, assessment becomes an introspective. A lot of people haven't even asked themselves, I just want something to change. What do you want to change, and what do you want to change it into? What does it mean? What would it mean for you to have that, and how do you experience, or how do you imagine that experience or effects have in your life? So just our assessment, besides giving us the opportunity to create personalized experience, we work with an algorithm and where we can create personalized journeys based on your profile. But we actually realized that just asking these simple questions makes you reflect on what does it mean, and that's again forming that mindset that becomes a guiding mindset towards where you want to go. So our concept is that we have the microdosing product. Besides other products, medicinal mushrooms without psilocybin, the active molecule that is in this mushroom that we use.
And what is that?
Yeah, so psilocybin is a natural occurring molecule. It's a psychedelic molecule. It very much resembles serotonin, and it looks a lot like dimethyltryptamine, which is another neurotransmitter, which is
DMT. It's called
DMT, which is a natural occurring neurotransmitter in the brain, but also a highly psychedelic compound found in almost everything in the world.
So it's organic. It's already in us.
It's already in us. Okay. Yeah, it's like a two steps away from tryptophan, which tryptophan is kind of the basic building block for every neurotransmitter. We have serotonin, dopamine, melatonin, and all these kind of, and also dimethyltryptamine. Yeah. So whenever you eat farm grass-fed beef and organic food, we get a lot of tryptophan, which is then, of course, uptaken or taken into our bodies, and then being used to all kind of different neurotransmitters. So and one of them, serotonin, that we probably all know and heard of serotonin as kind of the happy, the one that regulates mood, and of course in the regime of mood, that's a very, very highly simplification of what it does, because it's almost everything, your sense of being alive. So psilocybin looks a lot like serotonin, and so it gets to connect with a subset of the serotonin receptor. A receptor set called 2A receptors, and
these are like in your neurons, like when you're saying neurotransmitters, neurons communicating with this. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So psilocybin is a molecule that gets to bind to some of the same receptors as serotonin, but of course it has a different. To try to simplify it, I see it as kind of like a tuning fork for music.
Yeah.
Where serotonin has one frequency, and then when it hits the receptors, it makes all the little receptor antennas swing or going to that vibration. Sure. Where this looks a lot like the same tuning fork, so it gets to set to the same receptor sites, but it has a different frequency.
Okay,
that's the very kind of simplified low tech way of trying to understand or mediate it. So we work with psilocybin in mushrooms and some other different types of mushrooms that doesn't contain psilocybin but has different other properties for health, for physical health, for mental health. We work a lot with lion's mane, which is a mushroom with no psychedelic effect, but has strong bindings to neural pathways and the regeneration of neural networks or neurons. So that's the products we work with, and that we combine the products with that assessment. So, hey Thomas, how are you? What's your motivation? How do you feel? Where are you in life? And based on that, we create a profile. We recommend the products for your journey where you are right now. Could be microdosing, could also not be with microdosing, depending on your needs. Could also be some of the other mushrooms or other plant-based supplements that we have. And with a profile and the nutritions the nutritions bind together. We give you a personalized guide, meaning that you have access to content, personalized coaching that directly addresses your needs, what you answered in the assessment. So imagine just the sense of this microdosing being a course of 30 days where you would take this small amount of psilocybin containing mushrooms every third day. That's our recommendation. And your motivation is to have this change in life. You want to stop smoking or whatever it is. So you would have access to our platform. You would get the product sent to your home and you could start your journey.
Oh, you deliver it straight from the Netherlands to their house. Okay. This is legal because it's from the Netherlands.
That's the gray zone we're in right now, that we can legally operate as a company in the Netherlands. We can legally ship to you in Denmark or anywhere else in Europe. But you as a receiver could get a kind of like confiscation of the product because it's technically illegal for you to have or hold or obtain. So it's legal to operate. It's legally to send due to the European law of goods and cross border. But you as a receiver could end having it confiscated. So what we want to do and what we want to do with the platform is, of course, to help you take advantage of that effect of sense of self, create a profile and give you access to personalized content, and then use data quantification, help you quantify your experience along the way so that we can correct or change or adjust the content to be much more, so that every day we have even better something to address your needs, but also to give you a sense of progression and help you have that introspection and own your own sense of self.
Can you give some examples of how you've actually helped people with this method?
Yeah, so this is the vision, and we're in. This is where we are going. So we're not done with a public platform yet. So that's just we are ready with our products, and that's the first milestone, so that we can start this journey. And then we are seeking everything around the startup. But in terms of helping people, so we've worked extensively with people in terms of coaching sessions, my first discovery of this was actually that people are there high levelly with two different sets of motivation. Or motivation can be an energy, a projection of energy into your sense of reality that can have either a plus or a negative in its current or its charge. People are either away from motivated or towards motivated. Okay. Meaning, just to come with an example, so when we started, we saw a lot of people being there motivated by away from motivation. And that means that you don't really know where you're going, but you know that the situation you're in right now is not where you want to be. So that is often connected with some alleviation of stress, depression, anxiety, phobias, and stuff like that. So the first wave of people we started to help was very much, that's like 4 or 5 years ago when I started being public about this, started to take in clients. A lot of those clients were motivated by away from. So, and that was for me a strong indication of the existing offers for bettering mental health regarding alleviation of all the mentioned. Wasn't really helping these people, and a lot of the people I worked with had tried everything. Especially with depression, I tried all this different kind of antidepressants, and I have a suicide or the sanctuary or like in the mental hospital. That's my two options where I am right now. Can this help some? And for me as a coach and psychotherapist, and at that point in time, really being curious to. So what's actually going on here? That what we needed to do was to change that current or charge of the motivation into being a towards driven motivation, and using that sense of self that microdosing kind of creates to reflect on. So if you don't want to be depressed anymore, where do we want to go? What do we want to? And that is for me the interesting part that of course away from and towards motivation can be used in a normal coaching session, but having that extra component of actually having that change in sense of self made people connect deeper into maybe a more truthful or more sensed sense of what they really wanted in life.
Gives them a purpose, I suppose.
Yeah.
So not just remove the pain, which alone would be great, but if I could get rid of that and find something that would give me a spark in life.
Of course. So and a good analogy would be that if you and I were friends and you always hit me, and I want to get away from you hitting me. Well, right now I've actually solved my problem because I'm too far away from you for you to hit me.
Yeah.
But then I don't really know where to go.
Yeah.
I don't really know whether I want new friends or whether I want to change our relationship or what I should do. So I end up maybe going back again because that's what I knew. And then I'm back at you hitting me.
Yeah.
This is just an analogy to kind of exemplify that kind of, if you don't know where you're going after, in and away from motivation. I think another analogy would be if you're hungry, you are actually you're not motivated towards food. Deep down in your biology, you are motivated away from hunger.
Interesting. Yeah. I never thought about it like that.
No, but that's actually Abraham Maslow who kind of identified the pyramid of needs and motivations. Yeah. So if you're motivated away from hunger, away from fear and uncertainties and cold, because the minute you've gone to that fridge and you've filled your belly, that motivation it's completely gone. Sure. You have no interest in food. I could bring you all the nicest food in the world and you wouldn't care. Correct. Yeah. Because you are already away. You are away from it. It's done. Yeah. Whereas everything above, now we stay in the Maslow paradigm or domain. Sure. So that would be kind of let's say that above the line of away from and towards in the towards section would be that you have a ego desire to be a likable person. So if I would say to you, I really like you, Thomas. You would have that gratification, but that doesn't mean that you'll be full of it. So you could go out this door and the next person could say, hey, I really like you, Thomas. And these two guys could say, I really like you, Thomas. And you'd be you could keep going in that direction.
Yes.
So the towards motivation is so much powerful, so much more powerful because it can keep you going. It can keep you going indefinitely. So that was my first kind of eureka moment working with these away from motivated clients. Wanted to alleviate. Okay, they are actually, they have that commonality. They are away from motivated and they don't know where to go.
Yeah.
And that sense of self, working with that sense of self that the microdosing created in them, we used into a toward motivation instead. So where do you want to go? What does that mean?
I like it.
And so when the motivation, I see it as like on a map, where your motivation is the marker for where you want to go, right?
Yeah.
And away from is just a small little. I don't know where in the map. I just want to get away from this point.
Not here.
Yeah, just not
anywhere
here.
But here.
Google take me not here.
Yeah.
Okay. Do a U-turn. So after setting the map, the marker on the map, the motivation, I started to realize that the journey from being where you are right now and going to the marker on the map. It's like hatching out the coordinates. How are you going to go there?
Yeah.
And an often mentioned thing about psychedelics or microdosing is, you need to set your intention. Set your intention. What's your intention? Which is just, it's almost become like a cliche of just saying, what's your intention? Sure. Pure intention in relationships and all that. But for me, I really started to see that hatching out the coordinate for that person to go from where they were and to that mark on the map was the intention. Every coordinate is the intention of getting there. How are you going to go there? And then coming from this more maybe rigid, I have a programmer and computer science background. For me, intention is much more like it's an evidence-based function where you need to figure out what are you going to do? When are you going to do it? How are you going to do it? How often you're going to do it? And how are you going to prove you did it? Really much more rigidity in just saying, I have an intention of being a compassionate person. Okay, so when are you going to do that? How are you going to do it? How often are you going to do it? How are you going to prove? What's the evidence that you succeeded in being that compassionate person? That's what makes it into an intention. If you don't have an intention without an evidence, it's just a dream. Sorry, guys, it's just a dream. Keep dreaming. You want to be compassionate, but without an evidence, it's just a dream.
Sure.
So that was the next eureka moment. Okay, I need to figure out how we can create strong intentions. We have the motivation. It has the direction. It has the driving force. Okay, let's start to set out formalized intentions for getting there. The next level was to really realizing that for each of these coordinates and that intention, there's some cognition. What do you believe to be true? What's your mindset? What are you thinking? And that became into often a discussion and kind of uncovering or disclosing of limiting beliefs.
I'm not good enough. I'm not
good enough. That's not for me. I cannot go there. People will judge me. All that kind of. So that was the next part, the cognitive. So what do you believe to be true? What do you believe about yourself? Often some identification. Limiting beliefs often is I'm not good enough.
And this would come from our ego also.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Okay. So our ego actually, it seems like who we are is a good thing, but there's also a lot of self-destruction in the ego that we talked about earlier.
A lot of self-destruction in the ego, and often just to diverge a little bit is we are installed with so many limiting beliefs or programming in our subconscious mind that of course it becomes part of our ego. Often when we have this. You can say pride-based part of our ego. It's often a mirroring or a balancing of a opposite that is a shame-based ego that is much more subconsciously.
Or maybe fear.
Exactly.
Confidence of
Exactly.
So awesome or whatever.
Exactly. So instead of being balanced in the middle, we have gotten installed a shame-based identification of not being good enough or this is not for me. So we try to go the other way and become even more, and we struggle. Another analogy would be to say that when you really work on having the high self-esteem, it's often an expression of low self-worth. But it could be in many different. And of course, along the way, also looking into cognition and that sense of self, this microdosing mediated sense of self helped people getting into that contact of and doing that reflection of who they were. Yeah. And the next step was to realizing, okay, people actually need to have a understanding of their resources. Sometimes it's understanding what they have learned or their capabilities, and that kind of ownership of understanding, hey, I remember once I did this, I can bring that. So actually starting to owning and connecting, like Lego building blocks, their own resources to actually form and go to these different steps along the way on this map.
Yeah.
And of course, in all good therapy and coaching, the last thing that I realized was as these eureka moments was actually the ownership. And the ownership for me is the idea that whatever change you want to do in your life, and no matter what the route or the coordinates and how you think about it and the resources you pull in, you need to be able to own this. You need to be able to integrate it. And integration is not just something about you. And that's why I call ownership, not just to own it, but also kind of, can I own this? Because if I want to go to an ashram in India and I want to stay there and I want to just live there and be there and, write my books and all that, and I find out the route and my cognition and the resources I need, ownership. Well, I am a father. I have a son. He's 13 years old. So maybe I can't really do that. Yeah. So you can even say it's like an ecology check. That is, can this really happen? What would the consequences be? Can I, would people suffer from me going down this route? Yeah. So, so just to kind of wrap this up, that's how we started to work with people. And we didn't realize it was almost like a God-given moment when I, after a couple of years working with these way from motivated people, saying, okay, we need to fix your motivation, talk about intention, what's your cognition, resources, and ownership. I realized I had created a framework called Micro, MICRO. So that became our baseline for working with people using microdosing and wanting to change the micro framework, motivation, intention, cognition, resources, and ownership. Yeah. And at the same time, microdosing started to become more broadly in the public eye, and we started to see people starting with different types of motivation. Or motivation was already towards, I want to deepening my spiritual practice. I want to be more present. I want to be more with my kids and not with my phone and stuff like that. Sure. And we started to see that we could work the exact same way, the same kind of process towards and have that integration. And that is, of course, kind of like the basic building blocks that we realized that we wanted to take and formalize and create a company around. And that's actually what we are doing, using technology, creating algorithm, but using this framework of understanding people's evolutionary process of going somewhere with a heightened sense of self.
I mean, it sounds like such a cool and interesting and effective way to help people. Is there I mean, I've heard about people microdosing. Is there like evidence or proof or studies or universities that are doing this to help create more awareness of this? Because it seems like a very effective
It's tool. Super interesting because you have almost a division or dividing division in academic and universities and research, that some are saying we can't really, based on what we have. Our research show that we can't really tell the difference between placebo and a microdose. Okay. And others are saying, well, we're doing studies on rats and nobody told them they would get a microdose and we see the effect. So there isn't a consensus. There's more of a splitting, I would say. Or you can say not a splitting per se, but maybe more of a, so the research we have conducted so far, we can't really tell whether it's one or the other. Yeah. Whereas other researchers are saying we can in animal and So and here in Copenhagen there's especially one researcher I really like, and I have a good peer connection with Michael Palner, who's researching on Rigshospitalet in microdosing, or he's actually researching in serotonin, and that has led him into microdosing of psilocybin, and he's been researching in OCD, so obsessive compulsive disorder, using rats to see the change in their compulsiveness to their grooming process, and how resilient they would be to being this kind of disturbed or interrupted in the grooming process and stuff like that. So super interesting studies going on.
Have you seen I've heard that you can actually, the results of helping someone with depression, for example, it can happen quite quickly, whereas normally someone might go to therapy for years to overcome depression. But have you ever experienced recovery through depression in very,
Yes.
Can you tell more about that?
Yeah. So a lot of the studies with depression is done with macro doses, so not micro, but larger doses of for instance, psilocybin. We also work with larger doses, I do as a therapist and coach. But this is often in the setting of therapy. So we've had clients that have been depressed and have been through different regimes or not. That people have different routes in their depression, like with everybody else in life. But one single high dose of psilocybin, from my experience and also what the science points at, can change or is changing the brain, the mind, the experience of being a person alive radically in favor of not feeling depressed. So what actually happens, or one of the researched angles into this, is that at higher doses, or maybe at all doses, but of course there's some threshold. But in this context of higher doses, the area in the brain, I mentioned it early on in our talk, called the default mode network, is like I see it as a router, like in a network. It routes information between our different major parts of the brain, prefrontal cortex, our long-term memory, the thalamus of a right now, here and now. So it kind of routes all the different parts of the brain, and it kind of creates the sense of I. It's the area often called where the ego would live.
Yeah, I was about to say the ego. Is that the ego? So,
So, and what's interesting is that people who is suffering from stress, anxiety, depression, so different kinds of trauma, actually have a heightened activity, higher activity in that area. That area that you could say is an area that calculates or processes. It's self-referencing, and it's also the area that creates or are able to create abstractions. And abstraction, what is an abstraction? Well, I, as a concept,
is just an idea. It seems like something solid, but it's just an idea.
Super abstract. What is I? But also something like time. So time and worrying about tomorrow or having grief about what you didn't do yesterday. That would be the abstraction, that part of the brain that is superpower, because it gives us the ability to travel through time. Actually, what we can do, right? With that
cognitively speaking.
Cognitively, but I've always as growing up, I had this sense or the idea that I'm the body, or I have a body, and inside of the body lives my mind and my consciousness. But growing older and working with consciousness, I've realized that my mind creates a field of consciousness, which is a field of reality, which in my body lives. And my body is the reaction, or I would say the reaction or the mapping of that reality into chemistry, into bodily chemistry. So if I travel through time cognitively, and I think about something sad going on, when I lost my dog and I was really sad, my body starts to react to it. I release cortisol or whatever that mimics or maps that very field of reality I just created.
Yeah.
So that power, that place in the mind that can do the abstraction and travel through time, it's super powerful. It creates the reality in which the body lives.
Yeah.
So whenever we go outside of the present moment, we force our body to react to something that isn't real.
Yeah.
And the body doesn't know. It's always, the body's always in the present moment, but we create a different reality for the body to be in.
I think a very simple example would be if in the future, let's say you have to talk on stage, for example.
Or do a podcast with you. Or already excited. My heart starts beating.
Yeah, and so you're just sitting comfortably. There's no threat, but just because you're imagining the future, all of a sudden your body is actually doing physiological changes in response to what normally might be like a threatening animal about to attack you. It doesn't know that fear response, it creates the same, even though everything's fine, and you're thinking about something that's in the future. Your body does this.
Of course, you just hit the nail on what is a trauma.
Yeah.
It's the body, it's the mind reenacting, reliving with the body something that isn't going on right now, but every response is acting as it is happening right now.
So the same thing, I guess, would happen if you keep thinking, oh, I can't do that in the future, or I can't achieve these things, and that creates maybe a sluggishness or a lack of motivation, then that actually will change your body thinking negatively. It's more than just thinking negatively. Your body will actually, it does damage to your body.
Definitely does. Yeah. And that is spot on also when I mentioned before talking about resources and the cognitive thinking of do I believe in this? Yeah. It's so important because we virtualize that cloud of reality, that field of consciousness wherein the body lives. And as you said, the body reacts to it. So if I say, hell yeah, I can go on a podcast with you. Of course I can. I can sit here and talk. My body creates that adrenaline and the testosterone. And I'm there. I own it. But if I say, oh, I'm so afraid, and Thomas might, maybe he'll hit me, whatever. Right. So it's so powerful.
That's why coaches say visualize the dream, visualize the goal, because it gets your body in tune with that, so you perform at that level. Yeah.
If you can believe it, you can achieve it.
Yeah. That's incredible. Since we're running out of time, do you have any final words of advice for someone at home who might be interested in trying microdosing that they could do from home alone? Is it safe to do this alone?
Yes, it's perfectly safe. So thank you for letting me plug that. So of course I would say that you should go to thedose.com because that's our initiative and where we want to help you get started with everything around it. We have guides, we have guided breathwork, setting intention guides, and of course the ability to send you the microdose.
Okay.
So microdoses and microdosing with psilocybin, it's non-toxic, it's non-addictive. You cannot become addicted to this. Within 5 days, you would build up a tolerance. So you won't feel anything. And so,
and that's why you have people do it every 3 days.
That's one of the reasons to have, to not build up that tolerance. But it's actually also for us, it's very important that microdosing doesn't become a new life on crutches. We strongly believe that microdosing is something that you tap into. You work with that sense of self, you own it, you integrate it, and then you take a pause from microdosing.
Okay.
So, and the 3 days interval is also to give you a sense of this is you on a dose day, this is you on a transition day, and then a normal day where you get to just be Thomas. And then we start over.
Okay.
Because again, we want to help you integrate it and not build a life on crutches.
Sure. Well, that's incredible. It's been so much fun to talk to you. I'm so glad you came here.
Thank you.
And I hope you guys got some useful advice out of this and can integrate this in your life at home. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.
Bye.